All right. What's up, everybody? I'm going to get started in a couple minutes. Just want to give people another minute or two to join. Get started in just a minute. All right, let's get started. Good evening, everyone. Love to see so many people here tonight. Welcome to those who are new. This session I wanted to bring together for all the new members of Asgard Skylit. I am one of the success partners for Skylit. Nico G8 is the other one. If you have any questions, you can add me, send me a message. I do one-on-ones. So does Nico. I have a lot of new people reaching out, wanting to do one-on-ones, and I see them fairly booked out. So I wanted to do this session for all the newer people um, before going into the week, so that way they can get a general idea of how to use Heatseeker, what best practices are, common mistakes, things to look for, A plus setups, when not to take a trade. Proper sizing is a really important thing. So I wanted to spend some time tonight for the new people to go over those things. Glitch kind of did like a heat seeker clinic last night. So if you didn't watch that, I also recommend that as well. But nevertheless, if you're here tonight, I'm going to give you like a getting started, like a little crash course in Heatseeker. And if anyone has any questions, just shoot me a message in the Zoom chat, and I'll be happy to answer any questions you have. So I'm gonna go ahead and share my screen, and we'll get started. By the way, can everyone hear me okay? Perfect. Let's do this. All right. So all the newer people, yeah, welcome. Uh, Welcome to Asgard Skylit. We started out as Asgard boot camp, and then as the product continued to grow and things got bigger, we advanced to Skylit, which is the web UI version of Heatseeker, which is what you're seeing here to the right. Uh, Back in the day, we had it only on SPX and it was only available in Discord. So we have really, really advanced quite a bit into the product that we have today. So I'm just going to go over a little bit about Heatseeker, what it is, and how to use it. I'll go ahead and start with that. So Heatseeker is a tool that tells us dealer positioning in real time. It updates every 5 seconds for the indices, SPX SPY, QQQ, and IWM. And it updates every 50 seconds on individual tickers. And someone can correct me if that number is either 50 seconds or like 30 seconds. I don't remember off the top of my head, but I know it's less than a minute. So if anyone knows that number, just correct me if I'm wrong. Let me share this screen here. Okay, so What we want to look for when looking for deflections of nodes. Let me see. If we go over 99 participants, I'm gonna see if I can increase the amount. So I'll keep an eye on that. Nevertheless, when we're looking at nodes, the size matters of the node, not so much the color or the number sign. What the color and the number sign of the node tells us is how price will behave as it's approaching that node. So when we have yellow nodes, volatility tends to dampen and price action tends to slow down. When we run into purple nodes, volatility increases. We get much more whippy, thrashy, violent action. The best plays occur when we're playing a deflection of a purple node. We still get good interactions with yellow nodes, but the bread and butter, the money setups are often purple nodes. And the reason being is when we're playing deflections of purple nodes, big purple nodes, we get overshoots of those nodes from time to time. And on those overshoots, we can get very, very cheap fills on options. So if we're looking to play a deflection of, for example, 6680, well, let me see if there's a better one here. So if 6650 were a king node or a gatekeeper node, and we overshot it, the idea is to enter here on puts when it's cheaper and look to get the ride down off of the deflection. That's one of the best practices you can do is play the overshoot, lowball the bid, and look to get a very cheap entry to write it down. Because what happens then is because you get a very cheap entry, you have very little drawdown on your trade. So as soon as price goes into your favor, you're already up 30, 40%. That's one of the best practices that you can do. I kind of so purple node or sell and buy side liquidity. So purple nodes, that's a good question. Usually what I see from purple nodes is sometimes we can get liquidity hunts off of that level. So what you're saying about buy and sell side liquidity, yeah, we could see that. Like for example, here at 6,600, or even let me see here. There was a really good example a couple of days ago. I think it may have been, maybe it was this. We stop hunted people and we got a nice reversal. So that's kind of the idea. Enter um enter calls when everyone is getting stopped out, which gives us confluence if it's in line with a if it's in line with a floor, right? So in this case, if we have 6,600 as a purple node floor, look to enter calls there, which is in line with all the people who got stopped out here, and look to take a reversal trade there to the upside, and we go up and up and up. So that's the idea. Yes, a lot of the times you'll see purple nodes line up with liquidity hunts. Yes, buy and sell side liquidity as well. Yes, you see that. Um, yeah, when you play in deflections, sometimes you'll see that the map maybe isn't pointing up. I do have a case study kind of explaining that up here in Insights. Let's see if this will load. I believe it was SPX that wasn't really showing higher. Yeah. So this was a case study, I believe, for earlier this week, last week. We had this node at 6625 that was acting as a floor. We did have downside accumulation. We had upside as well. So the idea was to play the stop hunt here off of the overshoot of 6625, which is actually 620. But because SPY and QQQ were showing floors at 660 and 598, it was a perfect spot to enter calls. That's kind of the idea, to play deflections of nodes to get ahead of the reshuffle, because what you see is that when we deflect a key node, when we deflect a gatekeeper node or a king node, what we see is once we enter at the deflection, we see the map begin to reshuffle. And the idea is to get ahead of the reshuffle, not to chase it, because if we chase price after it already deflected, now we could get caught in the crossfire with the reshuffle and maybe get caught in some whippy violent action and maybe get stopped out. So the idea is to get ahead of it before we get that confirmation to give us that nice reversal to the upside. Great question. What if the reshuffle goes against us? Well, not every reshuffle is going to, not every node deflection is going to work perfectly, right? Context matters. We're looking at price action. We're looking at a market structure. We're looking at support and resistance lines to see if it lines up with our thesis. But, Heatseeker is not perfect. It's not 100% guaranteed. So the idea is by playing the deflection, we're getting very, very good risk to reward, right? So even if the reshuffle doesn't go in our favor, because we have tight stop losses underneath the node, we're taking paper cut losses. Versus if we were to chase price, if we entered maybe here, but we broke down below 6,600. Maybe you're taking a 5-point stop loss. Versus if you enter up here, after we already reshuffled and price were to break down, you're taking a much wider stop loss. So that's the idea behind king nodes, is to get the best risk to reward possible, that if it doesn't work in your favor, you're not taking massive losses. Yep, no problem. Yeah, so at what point do you determine a purple/yellow node is a floor or a ceiling? Yeah, great question. So I like to determine them as a floor or a ceiling for a couple of different reasons. If the node is very, very large in value, for example, in this case, SPX 6600, hypothetically speaking, if market were open right now and we came down to this level here, I would consider this a floor, given that, this is the largest node. It's a very, very strong node, and we don't really have a lot of downside to support a breakdown. We're looking to play the deflection. Now, the other thing is too, the first test of the node gives you the highest probability for a bounce, or one of my one-on-one students recommended ricochet. The first ricochet or the first bounce of the node gives us the highest probability that it's going to hold. And then each subsequent test of the node makes it weaker. If we have a second ricochet or a second bounce, it becomes a double bottom, a 66% probability. But after the second test, after the third and fourth, it's much less. It becomes 33% probability for a bounce. So the odds aren't in our favor anymore. So you enter in a perfect world, we enter directly at the king node, but because it's not perfect, sometimes we can reject within a margin of 5 to 10 points. So anywhere, for example, at 6,600, we could bounce a ricochet anywhere within this margin of 5 points plus or minus, above and below it. Anywhere in this range. And you can kind of see how that, here. You can kind of see how that worked out here. Because we ricocheted off of it here, and then we got that reversal. We tested it here. We held it, and we went and started going up. That's kind of the idea. So what about if there's a yellow and purple node on opposite sides? Yeah, so it depends on the size of the node. Yellow versus purple doesn't really matter much to me as much as the size of the node is. Let's say in this hypothetical situation that the yellow and the purple node are equal in value. If it's negative 18,000 and positive 18,000, we have equal pull. So the idea instead is, let's say in this hypothetical situation, price gets up to that yellow node to the upside. Now you want to play puts at that upside node and target downside, right? Because the idea is to play the edges of the range. Market makers have this range between this hypothetical yellow node and this hypothetical purple node. The idea is to play the deflection and target downside. The targets are kind of it's very dependent. The idea is to play the reshuffle. So looking at node rate of change matters. So if you see if you play a deflection of a node, right, and map starts to reshuffle, and you begin to see accumulation in the opposite direction, we can kind of infer that, market makers are beginning to stack upside at these specific nodes. We may be able to target those nodes as potential price targets. They don't always hit because it's completely dependent on market conditions at the time. So we can make inferences as to price targets, but the idea is, by sniping bottom or top, we have a lot more flexibility because we're not in drawdown. You know, maybe you're up 30 or 50%. Maybe then you can maybe trim down to runners and maybe try to target those upside nodes. Um, so it really depends on node rate of change. Should you enter your stop loss immediately after you purchase? So I always recommend, especially for newer people, to size for zero at first. What's really, really important is to survive long enough to get past the learning curve. What we're seeing a lot of is people chasing massive nodes to the upside or to the downside with a large position and end up taking massive losses. I generally prefer newer people to just size for zero off of deflections of nodes, because if it doesn't work in your favor, you're taking a paper cut loss. But now, if you snipe the reversal, you have the potential for way much more upside than just plus 100%. It really is dependent on market conditions at the time, but we've been getting these nice rallies, these nice reversals, these 5 point moves, these 10 point rejections. Um, Not to say that every day is going to be like this, but by entering on reversals, we have much more flexibility to manage our risk. So I recommend size for zero. Don't just have a hard stop loss, because if we're playing deflections of nodes, we don't necessarily know where the perfect entry is. So it's better to just let the trade breathe, size appropriately, and try to snipe the deflection. How about setups like Carvana right now, where I have both below the price? How to determine if it would deflect or just fall through and go into the range between both? Let's see Carvana real quick. Yeah, so Carvana, so let me pull up the map as well. So Carvana looks like it could. So we got this nice dip by at 325, and we bounced all the way up to 350, kind of in this range. So we hit 360. We overshot it before reversing, forming a double top here. So the thing with Carvana is price was delivered from this 325. Now we've already tested it twice. Um, if you were looking to play puts down to the downside, it most likely would have been at this 360, a no deflection. I think if you were trying to target downside or try to play the breakdown, I wouldn't generally recommend it. I would rather wait for you to catch a deflection to catch puts down to the downside. My recommendation now is to just wait or maybe set alerts at 300 and see if you can snipe a deflection of 300 back to the upside. Maybe try to catch a mapper shuffle back up to 325 or 360, or even there's a node here at 390. OpEx nodes are really far out there. So short term, I'd be bullish if we come and tap 300 and bounce. I'd be targeting upside instead of just chasing puts down to 300. So am I scaling and beginning 5 points away from your king node, or not entering unless you lowball limit at beyond your king node? So what Glitch recommends and what he does is he scales it. So as we're approaching the node, he's beginning to buy puts or buy calls. And if we continue to approach the node, or if we begin to overshoot, then he's entering into a full position, because we don't quite know where the entry is. We don't quite know where the perfect sniper deflection is. So by entering within this margin of 5 points plus or minus on each side, you know, we can still have very tight risk to reward. And maybe we overshoot. Worst case scenario, you're down 30%. But if you do catch the deflection, you can be getting much more than minus, you can be getting much more than 30%. You're getting a trend reversal, you can really catch uh, the meat of the move per se. So me personally, I prefer to be a little bit more pickier with my entries. I'm okay with missing the setup. That's just me personally. That may not be the same for everybody, but me personally, I prefer to wait for the deflection. If you don't get that deflection, I generally don't take the trade, but that depends on you. When would you see no rejection and breakthrough the first time it comes to a keynote, or typically do you see a bounce on the first interaction? Yeah, the first interaction, exactly. Yeah, thanks, Toast. The first interaction gives a very good probability for a bounce or a ricochet. Um, and the second bounce as well also gives a 66% chance because it's a double bottom. After the second try, after the second, and now we get the third and the fourth, I wouldn't be touching it anymore. Yeah, that's correct, Toast. Thank you. Is it fair to say that we should play those ones which purple and yellow king nose are at the same side, either both above or below the current price? And if yellow and purple are similarly equal in size in different directions, we will just wait until price to reach one side first and then check if the size of the king node changes rapidly. Yes, I am looking for, so in this scenario, yes, I am looking for the deflection. So we have this range. Let's say we hit the upside of the range. I'm looking to play puts to the downside in the other direction. Yes. Even if it's equal pole, like I'm waiting for that note to hit and I'm playing the reshuffle. By size for zero, I'm basically saying that yes, you plan for a 100% loss, be comfortable with losing the entire position. Correct. Exactly. Yeah. If, yeah, 1,000 position with 20% stop loss, just take a $200 position. Any good trader that uses Heatseeker and publishes trades on any Discord. Yeah, Hanakamatsu is a good one. Uh, Jewel does technical analysis. He offers plays. He does intraday analysis, all this kind of stuff. He's a good one to keep an eye on. Sometimes he'll alert when he enters and exits trade, so just keep an eye on him if you were looking for that. But generally, I recommend uh, learn to trade, like learn to use Heatseeker properly, and not just follow alerts because uh, uh, longer term, it's much more sustainable to fish on your own, and not just learn to fish on your own instead of take a fish for a day, just like the saying goes. Yeah, someone gives you a fish for a day, you're able to eat, but learn to fish and you can feed yourself for a lifetime. It's kind of the idea. Um, Is there a way to mark the ES and NQ node levels looking at SPX and QQQ? I am very glad you asked. Yes, there is. I'm going to put in the chat um, the indicators that I use to be able to see prices on SPX and QQQ on ES and NQ charts. I'll post it here. Switching back to futures, I have this neat little indicator here. Oh, that's gold. This little price converter. It tells me prices of QQQ and NDX on NQ's chart. It only works during regular trading hours. It doesn't work in overnight. However, we do have an overlay for QQQ and NDX level. So you can see here, we can see QQQ at 604 at this level here. You can see NDX at 24,800 here, which we did get a bounce here, and we are ranging at QQQ 608 as well. So I'm going to put this in the chat for everybody, so that if those who trade futures want to have this overlay available, that they can have it. I'll share it with you guys. So that's NQ to QQQ, and I'll post ES as well. And here it is. Post it right underneath for those who are interested. Now to find out where we left off. Okay. Um, you talked about how price behaves at yellow, purple nodes, but can you talk about how price behaves when those nodes are positive and negative? Also, if there are negative nodes stacked immediately above below nodes. So yes, um, yeah. So yellow nodes are positive and purple nodes are negative. So it's kind of the same thing, yellow nodes, yellow positive nodes, because yellow nodes are always positive. We get that dampening of volatility, and vice versa. When we have negative purple nodes, we get an increase in volatility. When we have negative nodes stacked immediately above and below nodes, what we can see is an acceleration of the move. Like in the example of the rug setup we had a couple weeks ago. We had, let me see here. Perfect example of how, pouring gasoline on the fire leads to a massive move. Is it this one? No. Mm, this. See how we have a ceiling at 672, and we have a purple node stacked below the ceiling at 671, and we have negative nodes to accelerate the move, right? That's characteristic of a rug setup. And we got this massive, massive dump. So here's that rug setup I was talking about. We got that massive acceleration, that massive violent thrashy rejection to the downside because we got that rug setup. How this is a perfect example of how, stacked negative nodes lead to a very, very sharp and violent reaction. So if you ever see a rug setup, I mean, it doesn't always mean just go ahead and, full port puts, but keep an eye because this means very, very high volatility, and you may get higher premiums, but we also will get more violent moves. So keep an eye out for this. This is going to be in Patternpedia, which is another Skylit document that we're working on that goes over Heatseeker patterns and what they mean, case studies of when they work, all that fun stuff. So expect that in the future. Yes, correct. Node color itself doesn't matter, but the value of the node, the greater the number, the greater the pull will be at the. So yes, the greater the pull and the greater the influence. Yes. So yes, you can touch on the second tap because the first and second tap are always the highest probability, but after the third, no. Third and fourth, no. First and second, yes. Okay. Is it fair to say that we should play those ones which purple and yellow king nodes are at the same side? Either both. I think I already asked. I think I already answered this question. Oh yeah, I did. So absolute value. Yeah, exactly, Nico. Absolute value of the node is most important. Yes, stop loss asks, but you would need real-time data feed for futures and trading view on the indicator for it to be accurate. Yes, you would need the trading view live data subscription. For those interested, it is $7 a month for live data on trading view for futures. It's $7 a month or about $80 a year. I have the $80 a year thing because to me, it's worth it. I do futures trading, so for me, I mean, I kind of have to have it. So I recommend it for futures traders. But if you use prop firms, I believe that live data is included with your plan. But if you're using like a Trade of 8 or Project X, you may not be able to get that price converter, which is why I have live data on TradingView because I generally do my futures trading with Trade of 8 and Project X. Just for clarity, we won't wait for a confirmation of a bounce. We just enter at the overshoot of a strong node, especially if it coincides with any support and resistances charting out precisely. Um, yeah, I mean, you can wait for confirmation, but yeah, you're generally taking a much worse risk to reward. Um, yeah, but personal preference, I prefer to just play the direct deflection. It provides me with the best risk to reward possible. If it doesn't work out in my favor, I'm taking a small paper cut loss over waiting for the confirmation. Maybe it doesn't hold, and I'm taking a much larger stop loss. Taking a much larger stop. Uh, any good trader that uses Heatseeker? Jewel, yes, Jewel. When we go into a king/gatekeep node and you speak about the bounce/double bottom, what time frame would this be on? 1, 5, 15, 1 hour? Or is it based off price absorption of the node? So I would think less about what time frame you're using. I mainly use the 3 minute time frame. I don't really use any other time frame. Um, but what matters more to me is, when price is interacting with that node. So the time frame that I use doesn't really matter as much to me because, whether you're on the 5 minute or 15 minute, price is still interacting with that gatekeeper node regardless of the time frame. Um, but the bounce in the double bottom, oh, I see your question now. I mean, I'm not sure if it matters that much. I don't know how to answer that question because I mainly just use a 3 minute time frame. Um, so yeah, I'm not quite sure how to answer that question. Nico, do you know how to answer this question? What are the tickers for futures ES and NQ? Yeah, it would be SPY, SPX, and QQQ. Is there something like an inverted rug setup? Um, I I think I may have seen one or two, but I'm not sure if it's like a characteristic setup that I'm willing to call it like an inverted rug setup. Um, but I am keeping an eye out because there's a specific type of pattern that I'm watching. Um, but I don't know if I've seen it more than once yet. Oh, here, Nico, let me unmute you. I just saw your message. Let's see, let me find you in here. Oh, didn't even realize we hit 100 people. Nico, would you happen to have any like way to add more people into the Zoom call? I didn't realize we hit 100 people. I just requested to unmute you, Nico.
Can you hear me?
Yeah, I can hear you, dude.
Okay,
What's up,
great.
dude?
Uh, what's up, man? Thanks
I'm
for
not
doing
sure how
this.
to unmute or how to add more people into the chat, but we already hit limit.
Okay, I'll
I'll
give
have
it a
to ask Glitch
try
for next
after
time.
this.
Yeah,
What
I
was
mean,
the
I'm gonna.
question that you wanted me to cover?
So there was a question about like double bottoms and double tops, like node retest. Like, is there any like specific time frame that like we should be looking at for double bottoms and double tops? I mainly
Oh,
just use the 3 minute time frame. I've had success with that, but I don't know if it
yeah.
matters if it's like on the 5 minute or the 15 minute. I haven't really noticed a difference, to be honest. But because I'm so biased with the 3 minute, I'm not sure if I know how to answer that question.
I would say it's pretty relative to the length of the trade, right? Like for you handling mostly futures and day trades, I would say 3 minute or 5 minute is fine. If you're looking at weekly contracts, you probably want to be looking at 1 hour, perhaps. And then if you're looking at anything longer dated, you can probably look at 4 hour, even daily. So it's pretty dependent on the length of contract. But yeah, I would, if you're getting towards weeklies, biweeklies, monthlies, I wouldn't get too minute, right? Because if you're looking at 2 weeks out contracts and you're looking at the 15 minutes, it could be a ton of taps, right? So just make sure basically whatever you're typically what I do is whatever I chart on to find the setup is usually what I use when I'm counting the taps. So
Hmm.
those are sort of the corresponding ones I use. So yeah, I don't. Hopefully that answers your question. Who asked this? No, no cookies.
Yeah. And SJ asked a really, really good question here too in the previous plot where I showed that SPX dropped violently. Uh, so great question. Um, when I'm looking for like a rug setup in the case for Spy, I'm not just watching Spy and I'm not just watching SPX and I'm watching all three uh, tickers together. I'm treating them as one. And what I'm looking for is inferences. If Spy is showing a rug setup and I'm seeing that QQQ is about to hit a king node to the upside, I might be having a short bias because we're seeing that SPY is showing, this uh, potential violent sell-off. QQQ isn't really showing much higher, and in the case of SPX, we're not really seeing much. Maybe a little bit of downside accumulation. This is like a good indication that we could get a rug setup. So, eh, in the case of like to answer your question, you know, we shouldn't just be looking at SPXs. We should be looking at all three in tandem, um, not just SPY for the rug setup to take puts on QQQ, but we have to look at to see if all three are in alignment or two out of the three are in alignment to maybe consider that this could be a rug setup. There's more context than just looking at SPY's rug setup. Like in the case of QQQ here, we had very little upside present here. We had straight downside. We had 609 as a floor. We had 608. We had 606. And here at this level here, it's kind of hard to see, but this is 606, which is exactly where we bounced off of. Even though that SPY didn't show a floor because of its rug setup, we found support because QQQ hit 606. So this is like what I mean. Like you can make inferences as to price targets by monitoring um, uh, nodes, rate of change of nodes to the upside or to the downside. I generally look at all three. So if SPY is showing a rug setup and QQQ is showing toppy, I'm looking for where can price bounce off of on either of the three. So it could be SPX 6720, it could be QQQ 606. I'm watching those areas for potential take profit levels. I'm not just looking at SPX solely just tunnel visioning on it. I'm watching all three at all times. Yeah, yeah. I'll go over the rug setup one more time. So the rug setup occurs when we have, let me see if I can make this bigger. A rug setup occurs when we have a purple node stacked underneath or above a yellow node. We have a bunch of negative gamma nodes below it, no observable floor to be seen. When we have this type of setup where we do not have a floor, we get a rug setup. We get the rug setup. Yeah, 100 is max, Nico. I'm not sure how to fix it. I'm not sure how to add more people. Um, yeah, I have a Zoom license. I just don't know how to add more people in it. When we go into a king node, gatekeep node, I think, okay, yeah, I see. Uh, Jewel posts on X sometimes and he posts in the Discord and he posts in Insights and Han posts on Twitter. And I strongly recommend, instead of following alerts, just um, Nico posts a lot of alpha, like he will give you like, hey, like I'm watching this level here for a bounce. Look to potentially enter calls of the deflection of this node and look for upside. Like Nico's does that for you. He spends a lot of hours doing that for you guys. So uh, to kind of save you guys more time for those who work, he's spending a lot of hours charting, doing technical analysis to give you guys the best place possible. So that way you can review those case studies, you can learn to execute because you already have the blueprint. It's just a matter of executing it, and then you can review those charts that Nico and Jewel are posting. And very soon I'm going to start posting future stuff too. So that way you can kind of get an idea of best practices. Oh, you're muted again. Here. You should just leave yourself unmuted, dude. There you go. You should be able to.
Yeah, thanks, John. One
Yeah,
other
just
comment I'll
leave.
make
Yeah, just leave yourself
for
unmuted,
everyone
dude.
else. Yeah, I'll leave it on mute for now. Yeah, Jewel, myself, Han, there's a lot of people that do a lot of work and post it very freely. So please, I know going through 300 tickers every night is not possible for everyone. People have kids, have jobs, etc. Take advantage of the work that others do. Of course, you can go through if you have the time, but if you're limited on time, it's better to take advantage of some of that work. A lot of the other people are doing, and that can help guide you and really it'll cut down some of the time you can do spend trying to find trades, and instead you can spend that time studying what makes a trade work out well or not. Make sure you're taking good entries. Are you being patient enough? Doing trade recaps. So like, there's a lot of other things you can go into for learning, and then while you're still learning all this stuff, you can just use some of the ideas that are posted by others just to build some thesis, so you don't have to hunt hours and hours every night for that. So just wanted to make that comment, just backing up what John said.
So, Josh, left image on middle screen. Which one are you referring to? Are you referring to spies? Yeah, let me see. Are you referring to this one here? Um, I wouldn't consider this necessarily a rug setup yet. This would be the characteristic rug setup, but as soon as I'm seeing this, I'm kind of thinking like red flag, like this could characteristically be a rug setup. So, um, by definition, 671 could be a floor, and we kind of did get a bounce here, but look how much lower, look how much more rug we got. Um, so yeah, I mean, even if you lowballed the bid here, maybe you could have caught like 20%, but I wouldn't recommend it because this is a rug setup. It's just this is a very characteristic rug setup. I see this and I'm immediately thinking bearish because there's no floor. There's no floor. And especially if you make inferences based on the fact that QQQ is pointing down and SPX was slightly pointing down as well, the inference is bearish. So observable floor, you see another yellow node below. Yellow node, which yellow node? No cookies. I'll come back to that question in a second. How does NetGex and NetVex work with each other? Vex points to possible further out move and Gex the shorter term. Yeah, exactly. What I've seen people do is use NetVex for like longer term price targets and NetGex for like intraday entries. Um, I've seen people do that with good success. And maybe even use NetGex like once you're in the trade as like potential like take profit levels as well. Um, would you agree with that, Nico? You're more of the swing trader than me. I don't really use NetVex that much. I mainly use NetGex.
Yeah, for swing trades, I would say if you're looking 1 to 2 week plays, I use both pretty evenly, honestly. Gex will typically point out potential bond spots with Vex carrying the targets.
Yeah.
And if you're playing further out, like 3 weeks or more, monthlies, or even half year leaps or whatever, if you're doing really far out, I would mostly just look at Vex. And you can carry a bit of weight on Gex just to see where we'll bounce, but the bias just goes all the way towards Vex if you're playing further than a month out.
All right. If purple node is at 667, maybe in the above screenshot, does it still rug set up like yellow node and a bunch of negative nodes and purple node at the bottom? So, I would say like 660. I mean, you can kind of consider 665 a floor, but did we even bounce up with 665? No, we didn't even get there. So we got a rejection from 673, 672, all the way down to 669. But there's no way to have known that, 669 would have been like the floor. Um, the better inference would be off of 606. I mean, we did get a pretty harsh overshoot down to 605, but the only like observable floor I would have saw was not on SPY, it was on QQQ, which is off of the king node here. This was the king node. Which even playing the deflection of the king node, if you lowballed the bid or maybe entered on the overshoot down here, maybe you would have seen like 15-20% of drawdown, but you've gotten a nice snipe too. So, but in these instances where we get these massive violent rejections, I'm not really looking to enter calls, to be honest with you, because this tells us no observable floor. And you can see here how the move was so violent that we overshot it significantly. So when I'm seeing a rug setup, I'm not thinking calls. I'm usually either sitting out if I didn't catch the put. Can we get the web UI to line up SPX SPY and QQQ GEX at the same page? Yeah, exactly, Nico. It'll have to be three separate windows. And you can just duplicate the screen or duplicate the window. Just duplicate the tab over to the right, and you can have Skylit open three different times in three different windows. But on one singular web UI, no, not yet. Yeah, I believe it is on the roadmap for customizable. Example to look at would be Baba, where Vex is king node higher and Gex building higher cluster. Let's see. Yeah, Vex is pointing up. I'm kind of sitting in this cluster. Yeah. So, um, yeah, exactly. Uh, I meant if you observable floor as in purple yellow node below. Yeah, exactly. Yep. But if there is no node below, I mean, we just keep rugging. Maybe I don't know. Let me see. Let's see here. Go back to that rug setup here. Let's look at this. No cookies. Can you? I'm trying to understand your question. If menu is unable. So a rug setup is characteristic when you have a yellow node and a purple node stacked below it, and you have negative gamma nodes below it to accelerate the move down. But because these two nodes here are so close together, and even 668, all these nodes are negative, you know, if we were to reject 672 or 671, the move would be more violent. And we would just rip through 670, 669, and 668. Um, and even then, like if we went below 668, we would be sinking 665 because these are low volume nodes. We would just knife right through them and go lower. Um, but 664 and 663 here, maybe you could, if we went that low, maybe they could act as support. But looking at the greater context, I'm looking at the bigger picture. So also looking at SPX and QQQ as well. Always looking at the three in tandem. Is the GEX VEX being calculated by the options contract at that strike slash contract expiration date? So the exact calculations are proprietary. They're not known to the public. That specific calculation is the secret sauce behind Heatseeker, and it's not publicly shared. So, um, yeah, I'm not sure how to answer that question then. It's pretty proprietary stuff. Regarding netgex, netvex, what about different nodes for the same week? If you use netgex for entries, would you even look netvex for that same week at all? Um, Usually when I'm looking at like for example, it's like swing trades, I'm looking for alignment on netvex and netgex. When I see alignment, when I see confluence, it gives me much greater conviction in the play. So if we're bouncing off of a floor on the gex map, and I see vex pointing up, that's a and gex is also pointing up as well. That's a good indication. Maybe that's a good bounce play. Um, for individual, so for indexes, yeah, I don't really use vex that much on indexes. I really just use gex. The only times I'll use vex is, for example, like tonight, we had SPX pointing just straight down to 6,600 here. So when we opened, um, I was very, very tempted to short this when we were here. But one of my rules is do not trade Globex, not trade overnight session. So I didn't take it. But you can see how this is already playing out because of how large this node is. You can kind of, this node was at 18, now it's at 17. So you can kind of see how this is reshuffling now. But when I see stuff, oh my goodness, when I see, straight down, like I'm, thinking, bearish, bias, bearish sentiment. And you can kind of see it playing out here overnight. We gapped up, and I was telling myself, if we gapped up, it's most likely going to be an entry short, and which is exactly what happened. So what do you mean observable floor? If we're playing deflections of king nodes, it should be last line. So observable floor, I mean here, you know, these nodes are relatively equal in value here at 670 and 669. So if we were to reject, we would just go straight through them. 668 isn't really strong because it's weaker than 670 and 669. So I wouldn't even count that as a floor. So you kind of see how it's not really obvious where we would bounce from. The only observable floor I saw was not on SPY, it was on QQQ. It was on 606 because it was the keynote at the time. The only reason it was a floor is because it was the keynote. Okay, can we anticipate overshoots for swings as well, or does it mainly? Yeah, you can anticipate overshoots as well, and Nico kind of answered that. You can address this question if you want, Nico, the one by Noah.
Sorry, was checking another chat here. Oh, and the overshoots. Yeah, so these overshoots can happen on all time frames. So I'll find better examples and maybe send them out after Noah, or just PM me and I'll send them to you. But yeah, I've seen cases on swings. Like you have to realize all of this stuff scales based on what contracts you're doing, right? So everything John is saying that holds true for zero DTE options that he's seeing on the 3 minute. If you scale it up to a weekly option, it'll happen on the 1 hour, right? And if you scale it up to a monthly contract, it'll probably happen on the daily, right? So all of these things sort of scale upwards. So as long as you sort of have to track which time frame corresponds with which length of play, and that'll help you sort of see the same patterns across all these different things, whether it's indexes or individual stocks, because it's the same things happen across both, right? It's just some moves are faster on the index side because we're looking at daily, or we're looking intraday, and then some moves just happen a bit slower when we're talking about swings and all of those. So hopefully that answers your question, Noah.
Yeah, so why is NetGex or NetVex different values on Skylit than other services? It's because the calculation model is different. Two things. The calculation for NetGex and NetVex is different from Periscope, GexBot, any of the other Gex tools out there. Skylit is one of a kind when it comes to its calculations. That's number one. Number two, uh, other Gex tools don't have a caching system. Dealers can hedge over multiple days and multiple weeks, but because these other data vendors, these other like GexBot and Periscope, because they wipe their data daily at the end of the day, we're not seeing the bigger picture. All we're seeing is a slice of the dealer hedging pie on any given day versus Skylit gives us the bigger picture because the data is always there. It's always improving. We're always seeing price update over multiple days, over multiple weeks. So the thing about Skylit is the longer a ticker has been active, the more accurate the data will be because if we have newer tickers that I think Glitch just removed, um, the longer that a ticker has been active, the more accurate the data will be because there's more seeding of hedging data by Skylit and the data vendor that we use, which we use CBOE, the Chicago Board Options Exchange. Different platform use different data and formula, so the values might be different, but the signal doesn't. Same concept. Yeah, exactly. Yep. Yep. Is keynote always the star, the highest absolute value? Poor guy, yes. Yep. Anonymous, I hope I answered your question. Let me know if you need more further clarification. Regarding the NetGex NetVex question, what about different nodes for the same? Okay, you already answered that one. Great. It's keynote always start the highest absolute value. Anonymous, I'm not quite sure how to answer that question. Um, because I'm not quite sure what the calculations are and like what exactly goes into the code. That's a question for Glitch. You should reach out to him if you have
Yeah.
questions because he can give you more of a clear answer. But there's stuff that he may not be able to divulge because it is a trade secret. So
Yeah, I was
ask
gonna
him
say
for further clarity. Yeah.
he'll share some bare bones concepts, but yeah, I guess if the hope is to try to learn enough to sort of unpack or rebuild, then it's most likely just not. You won't share too much, otherwise he's just shooting himself in the foot with regards to their product.
Shorty, I'd be happy to show you how I set up my Heatseeker. This here. And what I'm doing is this. So duplicate tab, boom, boom.
John, I
One,
have
two.
to. Sorry to interrupt. I have to drop off, start doing some one-on-ones.
You're good, dude. You're good.
If there's any leftover questions, just ping them to me, and I'll do my best to answer them tonight after I finish. I have quite a few, but yeah, thanks everyone. Hopefully it was helpful. And John, yeah, good luck with the rest of it.
Yep.
Okay,
No, I'm good.
have a good night,
Shorty,
all.
this is, yep. Have a good night, Nico. This is how I have my Skylit set up. So I have SPX, SPY, and QQQ. I have it set up exactly like this. I have one screen dedicated for this, and I have my trading view on another monitor. That's how I do it. Going back here. Give an example as iron. The net gex number is very big in purple, and 49 has a fairly small yellow node next week. But 95, yeah, so I would say I would rather take a deflection of maybe like 50, 49. I'd be bullish if we bounced off of that. But you also need to keep in mind that the iron node, I believe, is a hedge node, or not a hedge node, it's an OPEX node. This is OPEX for November. So remember to treat it with a grain of salt because of how big and how far out it is. Maybe it'll hit, maybe not, but just the sheer distance away kind of tells us that, maybe this is just a hedge node. We don't know. But just keep that in mind. But nevertheless, I would say good risk to reward if we come down within this range on iron, down at 49.50, like anywhere in this range here, maybe even gap fill. I would be comfortable taking calls. And we will see how it reshuffles. Yep. Yeah, so when the map color changes, you know, I wouldn't really. So when the map is yellow, it's because we have a purple king node. And when the map is purple, it's because we have a yellow king node. Tesla. Tesla just looks like it's ranging right now. Yeah, I don't really see anything for Tesla right now. I think that this is widely dependent on, news and rate cuts and stuff. And earnings are in a couple weeks, so I can kind of see us ranging. Yeah, earnings is Wednesday, so I can kind of just see us chopping into earnings, kind of just in here. I don't really see anything, to be honest with you, for Tesla. Yeah, exactly. I don't, when I see things like this, and this is a perfect example of when not to take a trade, you know, everything's scattered, everything's all over the place, And when I see this, I'd prefer to say, I'd rather either wait for 450 or 425 or even 415 because that would be the edges of the range. But even then, I wouldn't touch it because we have earnings. I'm very picky with my trades. I wouldn't touch it. Amazon. So when I'm charting my levels, I'm always looking at price action first. Then to support my thesis with Heatseeker. Look at that. We deflected 240. Go figure. This was a wow. I had an alert here that never went off. Go figure. That would have been an absolute top snipe right there. Missed it by 50 cents. Go figure. I think I charted this one with you guys like a month or two ago. Yeah, look how that worked out. Amazon price was delivered from 220. So I would say wait for the reshuffle on Monday morning, maybe Tuesday morning, and see if it sticks. Otherwise, I wouldn't take it. We have a double bottom here. We hunted liquidity here. Maybe we could get like a bounce here, but otherwise, no. There's a gap fill here too. So we're going into earnings season. A lot of these names are getting earnings. So just be careful this week if you're going to play swings, if you're going to play tickers, because it's going to be a very, very volatile week. Keep that in mind. Zoom. Mhm. Mm, we have a note at 77. Again, price was delivered from 77. We have to give these bounce plays, a margin of error, like plus or minus maybe 50-ish cents. Kind of barely missed it. We did get a nice reversal off of it. So um, I would say, let me see, how does the VEX look? I mean, it still looks like it can go down, but just keep in mind that price was delivered from this node. Um, so maybe you could take a short. Maybe if we spike up here, spike up into 81, 82, maybe take a put there. But I mean, this is very low liquidity. So, we could come up here and maybe not get like a harsh rejection. So um, I'm not really like the swing guy. That's more so Nico, but I just giving like my 2 cents about my general foundational understanding of Heatseeker is I would look to play the deflection of 81, 82, which I'm kind of did get here. Maybe if we double top here, go down, maybe. Just my little 2 cents on that. Yeah, of course, Tony. Have a good night. Apple. 260, 260. 260 is all-time highs. Yep, 260 is all-time highs. It looks like Apple already ran. You see this here. a run from 245 up to 252, I wouldn't be trying to chase calls up to 260. We already moved 50%. I would rather wait for us to hit a floor at 250, maybe to take a position, but this kind of already ran, and I would rather honestly wait for maybe 260 to hit to maybe see if we can catch like a rejection play. Uh, Keeping in mind maybe if we have little upside accumulation, but to be honest, this already ran. I wouldn't try to chase calls up to 260. Maybe if you catch a retracement sometime later in the week, yeah, like at 250, maybe like something like that, maybe. But to be honest, if we just go parabolic, I wouldn't touch it. Yeah, AMD move is from a deal, yes, and we significantly overshot that node. I think it was at like 180. So there's no way to have predicted that unless you were just in swing calls at the time. So yeah, I don't know if there was any massive nodes at the time up to 220 or not. No idea. So yes, Heatseeker's up to 5 weeks out. In the future, you will be able to set up certain expiry dates. That's on the roadmap, just not yet. Yeah, Lily, I wouldn't touch. Just straight up. Lily has just been just all the people who were chasing that upside node to 900. Yeah, I wouldn't touch it. This thing needs to cool off. We had this massive parabolic run. This thing needs to pull back some, cool off before we get another leg higher. And where's the floor here? This is a low liquid ticker. We really wouldn't touch heat maps or take plays if the node is less than four. If the node is three figures or less. So I'm looking for nodes from at least 1,000 and up. We have seen it work for earnings. Yes. All right. I'm gonna segue back. I kind of want to go into. I know people have questions. I want to kind of segue back into a little bit more of like onboarding and stuff. So I wanted to talk, and we kind of already discussed this a little bit too. Um, when looking for node retests and price delivery, I'm seeing a lot of people um, try to chase it. Like for example, Fig, try to chase nodes in which price was delivered from. I kept hearing that people were trying to chase calls back up to 70, but because price already came from 70, the probability of us going back up there was much less. So make a good practice and just take it with a grain of salt. Like if we become delivered from a node, if we rejected from a node, the likelihood of us reverting back to that node decreases because that node was already tested and its influence weakens. Another common thing I'm seeing from people is people are completely just putting 100% faith and trust in Heatseeker and just forgetting about technical analysis. So when you're charting your tickers, when you're charting your plays, your technical analysis should always come first. Heatseeker should be second. What you should be doing is marking your support and resistance lines. For example, in the case of Fig, mark your support and resistance lines and see if those support and resistance lines line up with Heatseeker gatekeeper nodes or king nodes. So that's something that uh, you guys should be doing as well. I'm seeing a lot of people oversizing, like people seeing like a fat node on SPX, like 100 points higher, like a king node, and people just slam calls at the ask, trying to target that 100-point move to the upside and get wrecked when price doesn't go their way. The idea is instead to play deflections and size appropriately. Only enter calls and puts at floors and ceilings. Don't try to enter in the middle because there's no edge in the middle. You're taking symmetric risk to reward trades when you're trading in the middle of a range. The idea instead is to fade the edges of a range instead. because it gives you better risk to reward. It gives you higher probability for reversal, and you're siding with the market makers when you're fading the edges of a range because we know where they're positioned. We know where they have their liquidity at. It's just a matter of entering with them and exiting with them as well. Yeah, we can talk more about the concept of price being delivered from. Yes, we are referring to where it previously bounced or rejected from. Exactly. Yes. We see it a lot, in another case of HIMS. I saw people wanted to catch the pullback, you know, um, enter calls at the pullback here, try to get the bounce play back up to 65. That didn't work out. The idea instead is because price was delivered from it, you know, if we didn't enter here at the rejection of 65 king node, just look for the next play. Just look for the next play. Because the probability of us going back here, because this node has already been absorbed, is much, much less. If the move has already occurred, quite simply just move on to the next one. You're not going to catch them all. We have 300 tickers available for Heatseeker. It becomes difficult, and you'll be charting for hours trying to chart all of them. And even then, even if you do, if you have like a million alerts going off at once, it becomes even more difficult to manage all those positions at the same time. So just be picky, be selective. Don't chase, play deflections. If you miss it, just move on. Quite simply. It's like trying to catch a fish. If you have a fish in the line and it comes loose, you pull your reel back in, you put another shrimp or another crab on there, and you just try again. Quite simply. Um, Days of the week where Heatseeker is working better. Not really. I haven't really noticed anything specifically. On the indices, yeah, no, I haven't noticed anything specifically. For individual tickers, I like to play individual tickers after Wednesday. Me personally. Nico may be different, but that's just me. Yes, I did cover the difference between Gex and Vex. It'll be in the recording later when I post it. Yeah, I'm not going to cover any more individual tickers. I kind of just want to stay on topic. If you have any questions about individual tickers like AppGo or AMD, put them in Heatseeker questions or ask Jewel or Nico. They can post it. I think Nico might be doing a live charting session soon. I think maybe Monday. So ask him. Price delivery doesn't necessarily reset after OPEX. No, I haven't really observed any difference there. Um, Best performance. So that's a good question. As far as best performance on Heatseeker, that's definitely a topic that I will cover tonight. You know, Heatseeker works better the more liquidity and the more liquid a ticker is. The Heatseeker works better when the numbers are larger. If we have a three-digit node like 326K, it's not as reliable as a node that's 1K or 2K or 5K or 10K. We see a lot more of those larger numbers the more liquid a ticker is, like SPX, SPY, and QQQ. Like Amazon, like AMD, Coinbase, MicroStrategy. Those tickers that have more liquidity tend to have more reliability. When can we hold overnight? When not? Um, I think that's more of a question for Nico. I don't necessarily or really hold overnight whatsoever. Um, Mainly because we're getting a lot of news, a lot of volatility. I prefer to just, stay cash going into end of day and be able to sleep better at night. That's just me. I will say price delivery. I would say uh, how long price was delivered from a node from on individual tickers. I would say, I've heard people say like 1 to 5 days for price delivery on SPX by QQQ. I would say 1 to 2 days. Um, and yeah, Heatseeker. That's a good question. Um, Heatseeker updates for SPX only outside of market hours. I believe I see updating on SPY and QQQ in pre-market, but I have not observed if it updates in after hours as well. So let me see here. You can kind of see that occurring on ES and NQ because that is overnight right here. And um, yeah, it looks like that's pretty much everything. Let's see, and answer this last question here. If price is below a yellow king node and breaks through to the upside, should we treat it as a break and retest? Treat that node as a new floor? I would say wait for the reshuffle. Yeah, we could see a break and retest, but it all depends on context. Do we have nodes to the upside? Do we not? If price is interacting with that king node and upside is accumulating, it could be said that the ceiling is being rolled up. So it all depends on context. So um, yeah. So just to recap for everybody, play deflections of gatekeeper nodes and king nodes. Get ahead of the reshuffle. Watch for node rate of change uh, for um, for reversals. Um, Remember, trust your charts, trust your technical analysis first. Put Heatseeker second. Draw your support and resistance. When you're charting it, see if those support and resistance lines line up with Heatseeker levels. If they do, you have confluence. You have price action meets Heatseeker confluence. And remember, don't chase nodes. Context is important. If we have a massive run up, don't try to chase a node to the upside. Wait for a cool off, wait for a pullback, or just simply move on to the next play. Um, that's pretty much the most important things. Size appropriately, size for 100% loss at first. As you continue to gain experience with entries and exits, you know, as you become more adept with Heatseeker, maybe consider sizing up to maybe a 10% port for A plus setups, 7.5% port for B setups, 5% port for C setups, and 1% for Latos. But for everyone here who is new, who is in this session, I highly recommend sizing for zero. And yeah, I'll have this recording. I'll try to get this recorded to my YouTube channel, which I will be launching tonight. One last thing I will say, for those interested, AAM Dylan, who is an oracle within Asgard, is running a boot camp. If anyone is interested in his trading boot camp, which is specifically for futures, it is specifically designed to, or for people who want to go into full-time trading. It is literally designed to rewire your brain to think like a profitable trader. If anyone is interested in his boot camp, send me a message. It is by interview only. Pricing is at 2K a month for 6 months or 10K upfront. Anyone interested, shoot me a DM and I will schedule an interview for you. With that, have a good night. Rest up. I'll see you all tomorrow morning. Trade safe, trade smart, size for zero. When in doubt, either sit out or just ask me a question. My DMs are always open. So have a good night, guys.